Welcome to Chik, the podcast where the girl with many titles talks about life, the good and the bad, and everything around it. We're going to sit, chat, share life stories and experiences, from business to relationship. Hi guys, and welcome back to the Chik podcast. Today I am joined by Asson. Thank you so much for being on the podcast today. I'm really looking forward to this because, as we've just been discussing, I need something that's going to make me smile.
Hopefully I can be the person to do that today.
Yeah, hopefully. But so this, in general, in terms of how the podcast is run, so we're going to have, so it's broken into 3 bits. So the beginning, we're going to talk about your challenge of the week, but I'm thinking of changing that to any tips that you might have as well. And then in the middle, we're going to talk about your, like, how we're actually doing. And then at the end, finish off with your win of the week. So we'll try and keep it as close to kind of 30 minutes as possible. And do you know what I've just noticed? My clock in the back, I've still not changed it since the time changed. I was like, that's off.
You're going to wake up one day and be like, wow, am I really that late?
But honestly, this kind of just shows me as well how much I use my phone, because I'm pretty sure my car's wrong as well. And I've not even registered it.
Do you know what? I think I did the thing of reminding everyone to change the time. Like I text my mum saying, your wristwatch, do this, that, and the other. And then I didn't change the manual ones in the house. So like my car, I'm driving to work and I'm thinking, my boss has not rang me, but it says that I'm late. So what's going on here?
Something's wrong.
Something's not right.
Oh, class. But right, so what are your challenges of the week, or do you have any tips to get started? And then I'll end.
I think with challenges wise, I think with everything that's going on in the world at the moment, obviously cost of living crisis is such a big thing. Mm-hmm. I think the challenge of the week for me, and with a lot of weeks leading up to Christmas and just the last few weeks, is to kind of just to be in the present.
Yeah.
Because what I've worked out is there's no point in worrying about what's going to happen next week or what's going to happen the month after. Are we going to freeze in the winter? Yeah. Winter's a thing. Winter's cold. Like we're never going to have a hot winter. Yeah. Let's be honest. So for me, my challenge, a lot of my life circles around my family, my kids, and my wife. So my challenge really mainly is to kind of just be there, be in the moment type of thing. Yeah. Because I've found that the more you think about what's about to happen or what's going to happen in future, the more you kind of like you start to move away from what's happening now. Yeah, yeah. And then you blink and go, oh, what happened there? And you're like, well, you missed it because you're too busy thinking about that. So really, I'd probably call it a tip is just to say, try and be as much as you can in the moment. Try and be there now rather than think about what's happening next week, because next week's going to come. Next week's not going to go away. It's going to come. But what's going to go away is today. If you don't think about today, come tomorrow, you're not going to know what happened yesterday because you missed it. Yeah. So that's sort of where I go with a lot of my thought process.
Do you know what? I love that, because I'd say that's my challenge of the week as well, because especially being self-employed, I'm now at a point where I'm thinking of, like, me and my staff, we're all spread across the world, but we're all feeling it. And then I'm thinking about, it's like you've said, it's coming towards Christmas. I've had mum and dad in my ear talking about getting a proper job, a secure job, all those types of things where I'm really trying not to let the outside world affect me too much and to stay positive. But at the same time, the realities of what's happening, like I'm supposed to be in England next week. And even then I'm thinking, like, I want to enjoy myself, but I also need to make sure that I'm getting some extra work in. So yeah, I think my challenge of the week is the same. Maybe just to practice being in the moment more and appreciating each day as it is, because it always does work out. But yeah, it's just.
I think we get caught up. We get caught up, especially when there's what I'd call outside noise. So obviously, like you touched upon, mum and dad saying get a proper job now. Obviously, me and you growing up in an African household, we know what that means. So you do get caught up because someone could literally just say one thing to you and that could completely throw you off. Yep. And you start thinking, you sit there panicking and going, oh, am I doing something right? Am I doing something right? And then in that whole time, what you're doing is you're forgetting about yourself. Yeah. So you suddenly fall into this trap that many people, I've fallen into myself, many people fall into, of trying to make everyone else around you happy. Yeah. And completely forgetting about yourself.
Yeah, so true. And do you know what? I'm going to come back to this actually, because you've also touched on, obviously, like the fact that we're from the same culture. So
Yeah.
introduce yourself properly first. You've already like said some good bits of wisdom. So actually introduce yourself. Tell us what you do, who you are, where you're based, all of that.
So my name's Asson Kasonde. I live in Warrington at the moment, which is just outside. It's between Manchester and Liverpool. And if anyone listening to this knows about Manchester and Liverpool, with Warrington, what they'll say is that it's the place with a big IKEA and a lot of roundabouts. Genuinely,
Yeah.
that's what this place is known for. But I've lived here for about nearly, call it maybe 6, 7, 8 years.
Yeah.
I think we moved here when my daughter was born. Well, just before my daughter was born.
Yeah.
So we moved to Warrington, and then I work in financial services. Now, people hear finance, they go, "Oh, you must be like smart up here." Like, yes, I am. I'm okay up there, but the financial services that we do is that we help small businesses, just growth aspect really.
Yeah.
So the one of my roles is to nurture small businesses and help them grow, and obviously offer them funding.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, that's kind of what I do. But in general, if someone was to ask me, who are you? I'll just say I'm that really annoyingly positive person. There's reasons why I'm super positive about everything. I mean,
Yeah.
granted, don't get me wrong, my wife hates the fact that I'm so positive about everything. But
Oh,
there's reasons behind why I try to find positives in everything.
yeah.
But I think that's, if you ask people to describe me, that's probably one of the things I'll say, is that the positivity is kind of there all the time.
Yeah. Perfect. And you've said you've got a wife, and obviously I know you've got kids, but tell us about your kids. How old are they?
So with my kids, so I've got 2 kids. So I've got a daughter named Phoebe and a son named Kobe. Phoebe's 5, going on to 25, um, and Kobe's 3, and he's also going on to like 30 because he's like
Oh,
a little man. I think so. My wife's called Sam. We've been married. She's going to kill me for this. We've been married nearly 10 years. It could be 9, but she'll kill me either way. I think so. I've just touched upon the positivity side of things, and the reason why that is so. My daughter Phoebe, she was diagnosed autistic at age 2.
oh, okay.
Now, so no, to be honest with you, it's one of those things that not a lot of people know, but
Yeah.
the right people know, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah.
And don't think wrong, we don't hide it from the world. We're so super proud of her. There's so many
Yeah.
milestones. So I think the positivity side comes from the fact that obviously whilst we were going through all this, there were signs. There were signs there. And Sam, and I mean, to give a shout out to Sam, I don't tell it to her face, I should really, is that she genuinely is the backbone of our family.
Yeah.
Like she's the one who keeps us together. So with Phoebe's diagnosis, it took me longer to accept it,
Yeah.
because growing up, we didn't know anything regarding autism, ADHD, those kind of diagnoses. We knew nothing of that growing up back
Yeah.
home.
Yeah.
So it took me a little bit longer to kind of accept it as such. Not that I didn't accept my daughter, but
Yeah.
to just get my head around it. But then I think, Sam being the person she is, kind of just sat me down and said, listen, there's nothing wrong with her.
Yeah.
She's just as many people would say, many people agreed, maybe don't. She's just wired differently.
Yeah.
And so what then had to happen is that we then just had to switch up so much about our lives. Granted, we're lucky because obviously like the spectrum, there's a scale.
Yeah. Yeah.
She's the only thing that's significant with her is that she's nonverbal.
Okay.
So she'll come out with the odd things, etc. But for her age, obviously, she should be saying a lot more.
Yeah.
But obviously, there's people out there who are helping us. She's in a mainstream school. She's got a TA. So all those things we've had to go through. And
Yeah.
I think there's times when we sit there and actually go, do you know what? We don't even feel sorry for ourselves,
Yeah.
because that is the worst thing you could do, is
Yeah.
feel sorry for yourself. It's
Yeah.
hard. Don't get me wrong. It's hard. And anyone who has any children or family members with additional needs will know there's changes that you have to make. There's
Yeah.
things that you can't do just as, we laugh because when my mum goes, because like my family have been great. My family have been great. Like they absolutely love it. Everyone loves her, but it's to be expected. That's your grandchild. That's your niece.
Yeah.
But it makes us laugh because my mum will go, right, are you coming over this weekend? And we're like, yeah, we're coming over. But we can't just get in the car and go.
Yeah.
So we've got a plan. And what's good with Phoebe is that she's such a happy child. She's a happy child. Yes, she has her moments, but that's to be expected. But overall, she's such a happy child, and it actually makes our lives easier.
That's good. Yeah.
And I think that's where the positivity thing comes from, because I've experienced so much in life so far. You know, we lost my brother 3 years ago through to, you know, I could put it down to mental health as well.
Yeah.
So there's all those things that have happened that you kind of sit back and go, right, okay, I could spend a length of time being really sad,
Mhm.
or I can try and be positive and do positive things, see the positive thing in what's happening right now. And I
Yeah.
think that's one thing that drives me on every day,
Yeah.
is that even if I'm having a hard day at work, I'll come home and I'll see their three faces and I'm like, oh, you're still here. But then, you know, so yeah, I think that's sort of one thing that helps me go on. And with the wife and kids, I think that's my main sort of driver every day.
Yeah. Do you know what? I love that so much as well, because I suppose for the people that don't know how we know each other, our
Hmm.
moms are friends. And in terms of the
Yeah.
community, we were both born in Zambia. We both moved to England when we were kids. And I don't know, it's weird because normally, like, we've somehow, like, through the years, just kept in touch, and especially during the pandemic. And
Hmm.
I'd say you're one of the people in terms of like the Zambian community where I don't feel like I need to kind of like hold back. Like the conversations we have are very much like check in how you're doing, that's great. Yeah, have a bit of like a chat about like how things are going, but it's just that kind of like it's just a natural, nice friendship to the point where like I was even because I was saying to mum that you were going to be on the podcast, and I forget that our parents could because we would have never done anything like at church together where they'd have seen us together. They wouldn't have
Yeah.
expected that we'd talk as much as we do. So yeah, mum was just really surprised because she was like, I didn't even know you guys talked. And it's like, yeah, we've kept in touch for absolutely years. But even in everything that you're talking about, I suppose, with the cultures and with Sam and having to deal with autism and mental health, a lot of that's resonating, especially on the mental health side, because, like you said, we don't grow up in a culture where these things are normalized and it's
No, we
okay. So,
don't.
like, so I had my friend Harvey on the podcast a few weeks ago, and he was diagnosed as an adult, and he's gone through like his own side of it, I suppose, having to deal with getting that diagnosis so kind of late on in life. But I suppose what I heard you say about Sam is that that mixture of cultures made it so much easier to manage. So like how's Sam been in terms of like your mum accepting things and your mum kind of getting her head around? Because I think on my end, it's been when you're the girl, it's different. I think
There's certain expectations, isn't there,
yeah,
from
exactly.
growing up. So I think with Sam, and I think this is why I always allude to, she's the one that keeps us together. You know, if say for example somebody got in touch with me and said, "Oh, by the way, you and your family, can you come over or can you do this?" I always say, "Can you speak to Sam?" Because
Yeah,
Sam does all the planning because she's really good at it,
yeah,
and she's got her head switched on. I think, and don't get me wrong, there's been challenges even before we had kids. You know, there was challenges because you're bringing two cultures together.
yeah.
You
And
know,
Sam's English
so
is a
I was listening to the podcast, you know, the one you did with G,
yeah,
and you spoke about, you know, he spoke about meeting your family for the first time and how you were like, oh, I'm surprised. I don't know. And it's one of those where when there was a few aunties that very much like opened their arms out to Sam and, you
yeah,
know, brought her in, and as expected there were some that kind of had their reservations, etc. But I think the one person that really made Sam feel the most welcome was probably my dad.
oh,
So my dad simply said to me, as long as you're happy,
hmm,
everyone else will come round.
yeah,
As long as you're happy, everyone else will come round. And I think that resonated with me so much because I was so bothered about what everyone thought at
yeah,
the time. You
yeah,
know, not that there was something wrong with Sam or I'd done something wrong, but
yeah,
I was trying to play peacemaker
yeah,
for both sides. But then I just thought, no, because this girl makes me happy.
yeah,
This this girl, I see this girl as the wife, you know, the mother of my kids.
yeah. And she
So
been
and
that.
and she has been that. And I think just that the word, because you know what dads are like. Dads are very minimal in communication, but whatever they've got to say, it's gonna have
Yeah,
some sort of strength to it.
yeah, so
And
cute.
just by him saying that and going, everyone else will come round, it almost made you go, take a step back, breathe,
Hmm.
let everyone see what you guys have got, And it's funny because I laugh about it now with my mum. Because like let me just point out, my mum was never, oh, I can't believe you didn't marry a Zambian girl
Yeah.
or didn't marry a black girl. My mum was very much on the happiness side of things. But what we laugh about now is that my mum says I started off a trend. So there's a lot of the boys that we grew up that
Yeah.
are now in interracial relationships and marriages and have got kids.
Yeah.
And now, whenever my mum talks about one of the lads I grew up with, and I always go, "What's his girlfriend called?" I'm expecting an English name, and it
Yeah.
usually is.
Yeah.
So I think just going back to Sam, it's with the mix of cultures. Like, don't get me wrong, there were times where she did have her doubts going, is this for me? It's,
Yeah.
because you can imagine that the Zambian culture is very strong and very,
Yeah.
in your face.
Yeah.
And there were times where, and I can't lie about it, there were times where we didn't agree on certain things, and,
Yeah.
you'd have full on bust ups, arguments, etc., etc. But that's a relationship for you.
Yeah.
And there were times where, yes, it did test her mental health. It did test her mental health. And I think what she decided was there was a period of time where she decided, going, do you know what? Even like visiting grandma for the
Mm.
kids, she was like, I think I'm going to step back. I'm
Yeah.
going to stay at home and you take the kids.
Yeah.
Now, at the time, looking from the outside in, you can go, oh, she's being disrespectful. Da, 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 da. But actually, what she was saying is that the last few times I've been around, I've been questioned on so many aspects about being a wife to you or being a mother to the
Yeah.
kids that it's making me feel a certain way.
Yeah.
So I understood that, and it was explaining it to my mum, just saying, this is that and the other. And I think as time has gone by, that has massively improved.
Yeah.
It's improved. Like my sister's relationship with Sam is so much better. Like
Yeah.
she will. I think I measure it with if my sister can pick up the phone to Sam
Mhm.
or speak to Sam without going through me,
Yeah.
then that's a tick,
Yeah.
and that's what's happened. And that's
Completely.
what's
Yeah.
happened.
I
Yeah,
get exactly what you mean. And right, I'm going to come back to this because
yeah, yeah.
even just talking about the culture side of it, even this weekend, like I've been talking about this. So we're gonna pause by saying, okay, what, like, how are you actually doing at the moment? How are you?
I'm good. I'm good.
That's
I
good.
think the reason why I say I'm good, and it's really crazy because you touched upon it at the start. I measure my mood with how the school run goes in the morning.
Okay.
So because I bounce between the office and home, so 3 days
Yeah.
a week I work at the home. So the days that I work at home, I do the school run.
Yeah.
So there's that thing in my head where I'm like, right, by 10 past, I need to be like this. By quarter past, we need to leave the house. By 20 past at the latest, da da da. So if the school run goes according to time,
Yeah.
now this is routine with obviously Phoebe.
Yeah.
So Phoebe lives off routine. So we've all incorporated routine. And I always go, if the routine goes well in the morning, then I'm gonna have a good day.
Yeah.
And luckily enough, it went well this morning.
Yeah.
So it went well this morning. So yeah, no, I'm good. I'm good.
That's good to hear. Do you know what? Beforehand, like I was saying, because I was so annoyed this morning because of how my morning started, I would have maybe said, "Oh, I'm feeling a bit off today." But just having this time to kind of just start chatting and checking back in, I'm good. And like we were saying before, mentally I think I'm fine. It's just that the pressures of life are always there. So I think for me, especially after we finish today, it's focusing on the things that are going to make me smile and not putting too much on my plate. So yeah, it's nice to know that actually I'm all right.
And I think it's okay to actually give yourself a break as well.
Yeah,
We almost forget to give ourselves a break.
yeah,
So
totally.
that's one thing I always lean on. Just say, give yourself a break. Don't be too hard on yourself. And whatever comes today will come today. But as long as you can go to bed tonight or 3 a.m. as you usually do, um, um,
Really well.
as if you can go to bed and say, do you know what, I've actually done something really good today, or
Yeah.
I've hit a target, then that will keep you moving forward.
Yeah, to be fair, I think again this is going to go back to what you were just saying before. I think on my end at the moment, it's more the pressures of not even just culture, because culture comes in so many different forms and it leads every part of your life without you even realizing it. Like there was a point where I was talking to Mlango and I was saying, I didn't even realize that sometimes I make decisions and it's based on an ingrained culture that I didn't even realize was me. So I'd think I was making a decision based on what I wanted. And it wasn't until I sat in the therapist's room and she was like, okay, this is time now. Let's just have a chat. What do you actually want? Go away and do some homework, come back. What do you actually want? And now I found that when I give myself that time to think, what do I actually want? And then start to think, actually, it's not always what my parents want. And I think, like you were saying about Sam before, and like her having to take a step back, I think especially when you're the guy, like I grew up around loads of like the cousins and my brother, obviously all boys, and there's that expectation of how the men are supposed to be. I was the only girl in England brought up around that, so I'm being taught the exact same as the boys. But when I act like the boys, I'm independent and I do my own thing, that's then seen as like a negative thing. And when it comes to culture, like I've always been interested in learning our culture, but I've always made it very clear you guys decided to bring us up in a different culture and amalgamate two cultures. There's a part of it that you've never seen because we deal with that day to day. So you've got to trust us and what we're doing. But I think sometimes the questioning, sometimes the words, they come from a place of love, but it's just delivered in such a wrong way that
Oh,
you're
tell
going,
me about it. I
what?
think what I've found is with the culture side of things, like you say, we've grown up in a certain culture, and we then got moved to this country, right? We got moved to this country for a better life, more opportunities, which we are very much grateful for.
Yeah.
So what I've found myself doing is having you've got to almost have like you've got to have a strong base, as I call it.
Yeah.
You gotta have a strong base about you. You will butt heads with the parents because they have had majority of their life in the culture back in Zambia.
Yeah.
And it's by no means saying as soon as we touch down in England, that culture is gone.
Yeah.
No, it's not that.
Yeah.
But you almost have to, you've got to, my sister always says, just remember they're getting older.
Mm-hmm.
So when you find yourself almost having to explain why you're not doing certain things a certain way, is because you've technically grown up in a slightly different culture to them.
Yeah.
So there's certain things around the house. I mean, talk about culture and growing up in a male-dominated household, and when I was a kid, I used to watch, like when food was made, for example. My dad would be sat there, and then my mum would bring the food to him, and that was our culture. So I didn't expect that of Sam.
Mm-hmm.
She knew about it, but I did say,
Yeah.
I'm not expecting you to be doing that for me.
Yeah.
But then we were at my mum's house once,
Mm.
and food was made. I think I was doing something with the kids or changing
Yeah.
nappies or whatever. And I come back to the table and my food's there, and I'm looking around. I'm like, who did this? And and Sam was like, oh, I didn't know whether you wanted this, that, and the other, so I just put a bit of everything in there. And for me, that was like, it's something that I've never asked you to do
Yeah.
and never expected you to do.
Yeah.
But then, bang, you're here. So then you look at it and go, this is somebody who's also doing something in our culture. Why
Yeah.
don't we also do something in their culture?
Yeah.
So
That's
that's
a
sort of
really good.
it's finding the healthy balance.
Yeah, that's a really good way of saying it, actually, because there is a swap. And I suppose, especially coming from the girl's point of view, like I remember when I was with Sean, we went to visit my cousin in Paris, and she would do it the traditional way, like on your knees, and here's a tray, and all of that. And
Yeah.
she told me off for not serving Sean like that because I was like, he'll serve himself. Like, I don't know what he wants. If I put stuff on his plate that he doesn't want, he'd be like, oh, like he wouldn't complain, but he'd just be like, I could have served myself. So to me, that was never even an issue. And because that wouldn't have been done at home, I didn't see why that would have been an issue back then. But it's those things that now, especially now I'm with G, like there are things that I felt like when I was with Sean, mum and dad just had this expectation that because I'm their daughter, because they love me, because they've welcomed Sean into the family, they'll tell us what to do and just expect it to be done. Whereas I'm like,
Yeah.
no, teach me why we're doing these things. Once you've like taught us, we'll go away, we'll talk about it, because there are things you don't realize at all. Because at the end of the day, like Sean had his own family, and they were going to have to hear about some parts of it.
Exactly.
It sounds weird to them, and even now I've said to them, with G, when we come around, because dad's always been like, I want to get to know the people that like you're with, like, and don't be introducing like all these different guys to me. So these are the only two people that have ever met my family, and there's been a reason why. But even then, I've still said to them, just because I introduced them and it's because I want this to be something, doesn't mean that you just go, we love you and they love you, so you're all just going to have to accept it. And I said,
do things the way we want you to do them.
yeah,
But it's one of those where, like you touched upon, they tell you what's expected of you, but my follow up on that is always, yeah, but be prepared for me to not take everything on, not in a disrespectful way,
yeah,
but you know, I also now have my own family.
yeah,
We now also have our own culture. We
yeah,
have so many different barriers to overcome.
yeah,
You know, it's almost like what you see for that day or two at a weekend
yeah,
doesn't give you the full picture of
yeah,
our everyday lives.
yeah,
So it's always a case of almost like you need to remind them to say, I understand what you're saying and I completely respect it, and we're 100% going to take some bits on board, but be prepared for us to not take everything on.
yeah. And do you know what? And they do find that hard. And I suppose, like you've already touched upon, because part of like managing conversation, I've always made it a point to talk about, okay, if we are going to have kids, what's that going to be like? Because I'm Catholic, he's not. Obviously, I'm black, he's white. Like the family dynamics, he sees family very much in the same way that I do, which is great. But at the same time, obviously, it's not going to be the same because the partners I've been with will always notice that I take on a role that's very much like a parent when it comes to being around my family, because I suppose that's how I've always been the firstborn daughter of an immigrant family. What are you going to be? You are
It's
like a
how you
parent.
grow up as well.
Yeah,
It's
like
how you grow up.
and that's something that like I found they see something where they go, I appreciate that's your culture and that's how things are, but take a step back and like when you are getting upset, remember some of these things you don't need to like allow yourself to get upset about, and that's very hard to get your head around because like you're saying, I'm thinking now, okay, I'm going to be creating a whole new family with this person, a whole new culture, we're going to have our own like barriers to overcome. Like how have you found all of that? Because that's not an easy one.
It's the biggest one for me, I think. Obviously, my mum doing it wrong. My mum wants us to have another 3, 4 kids. I'm like, it's
Yeah.
not happening, right? So I think one of the biggest tests for us was, so growing up when somebody has a baby in the family, one of the main things is to shave their hair.
Oh my god, my brother's been going through that.
Yeah, so now, okay, so just a little side note. Your brother Malenga, my daughter Phoebe's also middle name's Malenga. So,
Oh.
It got to the hair situation, and my mom was questioning. She was saying, "You need to cut her hair. You need to cut her hair. You need to cut her hair."
Yeah.
And I said, "Mom, it's not happening." And she said, and that's where that culture thing comes in. Like I said, "Mom, it's not happening." And she said, "Why not?"
Yeah.
And I said, "Because Sam doesn't want it cutting."
Yeah.
And I'll back Sam on this because she's the mother of my child.
Yeah.
And in that moment, you're stood there going, I've just disrespected my whole nation, my
Yeah.
whole continent.
Yeah.
But at the same time, and that's what I said about having a strong base. At the same time, you're like, no, I'm the head of the house now. I'm head of my own house now.
Yeah.
The rules that I make have to impact my household.
Yeah.
I can't have someone else making the rules for me for my
Yeah.
household.
Yeah.
So we did go into it, but none of the kids' hair's been cut.
Do you know what? Good on you.
So
Because on my end, so Mlenga obviously has had Eliza, my cousin Wemba's had Heath, and mum and like my auntie have just gone, oh well, they're not going to do it, but you will. And it's like I might do it because that would be my choice, but don't expect that just because I decide to do it, that everything else you tell me to do, especially if I don't understand why I'm doing it, I'm just going to do it. Because there are so many things. Like I sit back now, I'm like, thank God I wasn't the first one to have a child because it's overwhelming. Because that I think they always expect that the boys are just going to do their own thing because like they're doing the things kind of like it's kind of like the women are in charge. So you're going to go more towards the Western culture than you are the Zambian culture. And I'm like, no, like you forget that it's an amalgamation. We're going to choose the best parts for each of us. And sometimes, like I might choose that actually I like the haircutting ceremony, so that's going to be something for me. And on the other side, I might choose that, you know what, I might not do like the kitchen party or some of the things when we're getting married, the traditional bits. because again, that's for me. But yeah,
That's up to you
that's
to
so good.
decide. It's your life at the end of the day, and it's just
Yeah,
going back to the whole be prepared for me to take things on, but also be prepared for me to not take all of it on. And
yeah,
that's what I always have to remind myself.
yeah. Do you know that's so true? And so even with like what you decide to teach the kids as they're growing up, like are you teaching them Bemba or is it a
So
mixture?
on the Bemba side of things, it's not really something that has come to the fore saying I need to teach them
Yeah,
Bemba. They will learn in time.
yeah,
But the food wise, I
mm,
mean, the most traditional of all foods, Kobe, my little boy,
yeah.
loves Nshima. He
Oh,
loves it.
yeah,
And for me, that's enough because
yeah,
that's once again a little slice of my culture.
yeah,
I don't expect him to then suddenly like everything else.
yeah,
He likes a little bit of our culture.
yeah,
Great. But also, once again, we are creating our own culture in here. Yeah,
yeah.
Sam eats Nshima as well.
Love that. Yeah,
And that's another acceptance thing. So it's always trying to find the healthy balance. And don't get me wrong, there will be challenges to come. There will be things that will make you question ABC. But
yeah,
as long as you have that foundation, I think it helps you go forward.
yeah. Do you know what? I love that because that's something that I always say. Like it's about the foundation, and even as a couple, it's about the foundation. So I always talk about how, like me and G, to say that we've been together like 6 months, we've had some very deep conversations, and obviously him meeting the whole family, like there was a reason behind all of that. It's not just something that's small, but you have to do it in your own time and in what makes you comfortable. Because on my end, like I don't really speak Bemba, I understand it. And I always think, oh, it'd be nice for like Eliza to learn Bemba, or if I had kids for them to learn Bemba. But where am I going to start from? Because I don't speak it. And
But it's that decision as well. So it's up to Malenga to teach a member
mm,
or not.
yeah,
But whatever he decides,
yeah,
that's his decision. He's
yeah.
her
There's no
he's
right
her
or wrong.
dad.
Yeah, true. Yeah, love that. Okay, so we're
And I
starting
think
to run out of
that's
time.
one thing to always remember.
Yeah, that's
That's all
true.
right.
Okay, yeah, so we're starting to run out of time. So I'm gonna, before it cuts us off, I'm gonna end with what is your win of the week, and then we'll quickly wrap it up.
Um, my win of the week is always the same. If my kids can go to bed smiling,
Oh,
that's what wins it for me. I'm so about my kids, it's unreal.
yeah, love that.
If my kids can go to bed smiling, then that for me works fine.
Yeah,
Yes, there's other things I love. I love my football, I love Liverpool, and
yeah,
this, that, and the other. But I think if I look at my kids and I can see that they're happy, that's always a win for me. No matter what's happening, no matter what's being questioned of me, that's what keeps me going.
yeah. Oh, I love that. What's my win of the week? Do you know what? So last week when I was recording the podcast with G, I was saying that I just wanted to get through the week knowing that like I had some time away and I managed to get work done. I think I managed that quite well without feeling very overwhelmed. So I think sometimes I just don't give myself enough credit for what goes on, but it's life, especially when you work for yourself. Like there's always something else you're doing.
It's
Yeah,
life, but I think from where you're I think you're probably because you're self-employed. I can imagine it to be a case of you almost quote unquote rely on other people to tell you you're doing a good job.
yeah,
But you've always got to remind yourself that you know what, you've got this far
yeah,
because you've been doing a good job. If
yeah,
you were if you were utter crap at your job, you wouldn't have got this far.
yeah. That's so
So
true.
that's all. It, it's always the self love and just kind of just tell yourself, do you know what? You're doing all right.
Yeah. Do you know, I think especially at the moment, it's more the fact that because I'm not in a traditional job that the parents would have expected. I'm not in accounting, engineering. I'm not a doctor. Those types of things. So it's you don't get that. Oh, my daughter does this. Like they might tell other people.
How,
They always tell other people, but I think
how,
on my
how
end,
many
it's just
people how many people who grew up with are doctors right now?
yeah, exactly. But
Exactly.
I think on my end, it's just accepting that success is what I make it and what it looks like to me. Because dad, like the other day, dad was saying, "Oh, I just like the freedom." I was like, "Well, yeah, because I can work till 3 o'clock in the morning and then spend half the day in bed. Like that's how my body works. If I want to wake up early, I can." So yeah, I think the win is just accepting that. Do you know what? Things aren't that bad. There could be so much worse, and there are so many things to smile about.
And that's one thing to always remember. No matter what you're going through, for a fact there's somebody going through worse
Yeah,
than you
yeah,
are.
yeah,
There
exactly.
always is.
Yeah,
And that's a small reason to just keep pushing forward.
yeah. And things could always change, like you said. Like today is just one day.
Exactly.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for being on. Honestly, like this has been
No
such
worries.
a nice chat because, and this is why I enjoy doing it in the format in this way because there, like I was expecting we'd maybe talk about like your work and that side of stuff, but it's just been nice to kind of let that naturally flow because clearly that was, yeah, it resonates so much that I think it's also interesting for other people to hear what that's like and hear it from the opposite ends because normally it's women that I'll have on and you're hearing very much like a female dominated version of life and what's happening. So yeah, I really appreciate your openness
No,
and
thank you very much for having me on as well.
yeah,
It's been what, so long I've been going, oh, I
I
need to get
know.
on that, I need to get on that, I need to get on that. I mean, we could talk about so much, just
Yeah,
about the changes in life, etc. So I mean, if ever there is an opportunity to do it again, would
definitely.
100% be up for it.